Today's guest of mine is an amazing lady. She's got an amazing story, an author, a speaker, as well as a business consultant, a life coach. And really her journey is the one that really brought her to where she is today. And I want to welcome Tanya. Thank you so much for joining me today on this interview.
You are welcome, Bart. Hi.
So what's amazing about you is that you chose a path in a much more of a, how should I put, mathematical, scientific, very structured place as an auditor and accountant. And over the years, you've discovered the fact that, you know what, I'm working with human people. I'm working with that human experience. And you found this tremendous passion to helping others, even whilst you were doing all the business stuff as well. And for me, I think that's very, very important, because way too often we're so stuck in whatever rut, whatever sort of narrow channel that we are told to go into, and not really having that opportunity to discover, what it is to be human, until people like you come by and teach us what it is to be human. So I thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So I know
like the way you...
Go ahead.
I like the way you shared that. Actually, as you were speaking, I was thinking about the very structured business accounting, and there was a part of me that was just dying to break out of that structure and unleash myself, and that's exactly what I did.
Well, tell me how did that happen to you? Because there must be a story behind that.
Well, it's interesting. When I qualified from university as an accountant, I went into a role that was very much everything had to be balanced. The balance sheet had to be balanced. I had to show up at a certain time. I had to do this. And there was a part of me inside that I knew that needed to break free of that. And I'm very sure that it was my own constraints, my own inner constraints that I had. And so interestingly, at that time, before I went into another area, I decided to become a flight attendant with Air New Zealand, and I shocked everyone because I was going from being an accountant to being a flight attendant for a couple of years. And that was my own personal unleashing, you might say. And then I went back into another accounting role within Air New Zealand. But it was definitely something inside me that knew that there was more to come out.
So that must have been a very interesting experience, being a flight attendant and basically on the fly dealing with all sorts of crazy situations and crazy people, and having actually something that you're very familiar with, an internal resilience to deal with many of the difficult people that, are flying.
It was a very fast lesson in patience with people and building a rapport, knowing how to build a rapport, because not each flight was easy. And especially when you fly domestically out of New Zealand, you travel for a long way to get anywhere. So your own resilience inside, you're tired and cranky in the middle of the night when you've been awake for nearly 24 hours sometimes. So a big lesson for me.
So can you share perhaps one of your most challenging moments up in the air?
Oh, definitely. Actually, we just had turbulence, and the aircraft dropped, gosh, I don't know how many feet. There was no warning, and I was out there with a trolley, and all I could see were probably trolleys and food. They all went up into the air about 2 feet, and it was like slow motion. And then we watched all of these plates and glasses fall, and then all of a sudden the screams and all that. So the entire aircraft was just full of food. It's comical now when I think about it, but when it happened in the moment, it wasn't a lot of fun. I thought, oh gosh, here we go.
So were you the one that had to clean it all up, or did the passenger?
Sadly, yes. There was no one else to do it apart from us, all the crew, and it was just, imagine it, spaghetti and stuff all over people everywhere. So that was not one of the glamorous parts of the job, that's for sure.
So life is sometimes no different than that kind of experience, and when you think about it, because in that moment, I'm sure a lot of people were very, very fearful. They were not able to control their situation. And that's also kind of what you found, as you worked in many different businesses and corporations, when you just weren't there to help them with their new software and their accounting software, but you did something else.
That's correct. So after Air New Zealand, I did actually go back out into the accounting world, and I went and worked for myself and had many, many clients. They were all small business owners. So I'd be consulting with them, doing their business work, consulting there. And at the same time, I was building rapport with them and sharing with them and counseling them and coaching them on some level. And that was the time when I realized that there was a lot more to being successful in business than just doing the business. You had to have a level of fulfillment within yourself and self-confidence in being in business. So that's where my love of coaching and consulting business people on a different level really, really came out for me.
And what's interesting too is that even in those environments where, it's still kind of managed, it's still kind of within the norm, there are expected challenges and you can kind of, plan for them and predict them and things like that. But when life challenges come up, when adversity comes up, that requires a very special, moment inside of you. And I know that you've written something about that. And so share with the listeners a little bit about, how you came to choose to write your new book about resilience and what that means to you.
Well, of course, it's from personal experience and going through a very difficult time at 40 when my husband was diagnosed with cancer and he passed away 5 months later. Now, there'd been a few other hurdles leading up to that time, but obviously that was the big one. And at that time, I knew that I could, there was a part of me that was going, what on earth am I here for now? I'm 40 and, do I really want to be here? But there was another part of me that knew that I could not let this event define the rest of my life. And I had to dig very deep within myself to find that willingness to move forward and to find meaning and purpose in my life again. So during my 40s, that was when I experienced everything from the highs and lows to learning who is Tanya Unkovic. What's her place in the world now? And that was where I discovered how the resilience is in me and the resilience is in all of us if we just dig deep and find that meaning, find that meaning in being here.
Because the impact is huge, as you were sharing with me earlier on, is that, we all have choices. We have that choice that when something happens and it doesn't quite work out, and where we find that more than anything that anywhere else is probably on personal relationships. But when you have that resilience, that's that opportunity to develop the most magical and incredible relationships because you're just choosing to what? Not give up, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And look, it changed on my reason why. At one point it was, well, I'm not going to give up because I love my cat and I need to be here for my cat. It was even something as small as that. And then it was, Tanya, you need to get through this for your late husband. What would he be saying right now? He'd be saying, get up, girl, and live. And, people around me, I knew that there were people around me who were going to go through similar things, people in the world. And so I then went, Tanya, you've got to share this. You've got to be an example for everyone out there. Get up there and live and show people that when you make that decision, you can do anything and have the life you really want. You've just got to decide first.
Let me ask you something because, this is just a thought that just popped in my head as you're talking about it. And, I can imagine that one of the biggest challenges with adversity, not the adversity itself, but perhaps the meaning that someone gives to that. And the meaning can be that they take it very personal. Like, life, the world is against me. Or, I did something wrong and therefore I'm being punished, or I'm not deserving. And do you find that people take it more that the harder part is not the challenge itself, but perhaps how they make it so personal for themselves?
Definitely. And You know, that feeling of what have I done wrong? Am I being punished even? Some people go down that route. But once again, we've got the ability to decide what is the meaning that we're going to place on it. And if we can stop, well, this was my trick, if we can stop looking at ourselves and looking, well, maybe there's a greater meaning in this. Maybe there's a bigger meaning for mankind in this event for me, and I'm the vehicle. So that was the way I found the best way to find meaning, was to stop focusing on me and focusing on the others around me.
Because you and I know, because we've learned many wonderful things in a very similar culture, and I'm always happy to advertise that in the Tony Robbins culture. I mean, that's an environment that's just very empowering, very motivational, if you will, inspirational. But more importantly, it's that environment that helps you gain all these different reference points, as I like to call them, just insights and knowledge that you can now choose. And so it offers you a much greater flexibility. And so I would imagine that in adversity, you know, you have a choice, and you have a choice to be flexible. You have a choice to think things differently. And so what is it that holds people back, if you know this answer, you know, from thinking that they have these choices?
Gosh, you know, there are a number of things. I feel that many people don't feel they deserve it. Some people don't feel that they deserve to be happy, that they're not worthy enough. They carry the belief that, well, something bad is going to happen. I don't believe this happiness is going to last. Something else bad is bound to happen. Once again, it came back, well, we can choose to stay and suffer, or we can choose to find the joy and what is great about this, and accept what is.
You know, I totally agree with that. And I think another factor that plays a major role is fear. You know, and I think people sometimes are too scared to let go of the known, even if the chance that something much better can happen. You know, they prefer to have that certainty to say, look, I'm just going to be miserable. And for that matter, I guess there are times when people can use that as a vehicle. And again, you know, this is something that you and I have learned in this incredible environment, is the need for love and connection, one of our 6 human needs. And so you get so attached to that. But also, you know what? I think what happens too sometimes is that, you know, it's just the programs that we were taught. And that's honestly, you know, the reason for my platform here is really to give people new reference points of people like yourself who are successful, and you've gone through different challenges. And I think we all have different types of challenges. Sometimes we like to stereotype them, you being a woman, maybe you from New Zealand and you're blonde or whatever, right? But the truth is that we all have different types of challenges. And if we just simply choose to decide, look, what is it that I really want? And I can own my space. I can own my own power. And to do that, you know, let me find some, you know, new references. And that's what you shared with me earlier on. You're just one of those junkies in personal development, which, by the way, so am I.
Awesome. It's a great way to be, isn't it?
You know, it's interesting because in my particular case, and I usually share this in my shows, is that I actually grew up in 5 different countries, speak 4 different languages. I believe everything about education. I had the most wonderful education throughout my life. And, you know, I think that's such a undervalued part of society these days, is that you know, the younger generations too, education is just kind of blown off. I mean, education is really, really everything. But what's interesting in my particular case is that, you know, I trained in the medical sciences for 17 years. That's a long time before I could actually start working, right? And it was very interesting for me because at the end of that period, and I was married and I had children, and something was just off. I mean, I had my first new home, and I had this beautiful office, and my career was about to explode, being a plastic and reconstructive and regenerative surgeon. But something was definitely off, and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't put my finger on it. And this is a long story, which I'll keep for another day, and maybe I'll share with you later on. But what was interesting is, totally against my will, I was brought to a Tony Robbins event. And the circumstances were quite interesting, by the way. But I went to this event very resistant, very reluctantly, and really with a plan to escape within the first 10 minutes of the event. I was very unhappy because I was in a suit and tie, and and all these people were in jeans, and they're happy, and they're clapping, and singing, and all this kind of shit. And then I had seen Tony Robbins, in the middle of the night, on the QVC channel, and thinking, what is this crap? And but very honestly, I have to tell you this, is that as much as I was planning to leave within the first 30 minutes, I had to give my friends that amount of time. Within the first 10 minutes, I realized my whole life was about to change. And that was a pivotal moment in my life. And I'm so blessed that I went to that event, and saw Tony Robbins, because what Tony Robbins did for me, and this is the purpose of my platform and all the things that you and I do for others, is really open the door to more opportunities, really open the door to new references, new possibilities, and to really live the life that you desire. And I know that's your passion, and that's why I invited you today to have a talk with me.
And I have to say the same as well. Going to my first Tony Robbins event took things to another level for me. And whilst I'd been in the personal development arena for many, many years, my husband hadn't. And so here we are at our first event, and we were fortunate to get some nice seats up the front. And Tony comes out on stage, and he's, everyone's clapping and dancing, and I'm standing up and I'm clapping, and my husband's standing there with his arms to his side, And I said to him, don't worry, love, you'll be clapping by the end of the day. And sure enough, within a couple of hours, he was clapping away, and he got into it. And the change in him was outstanding. And, watching him on Relationship Day at Date with Destiny, to me, I'll never forget that scene. So you're right. Things go to a very different level, don't they?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
By the way, you picked the right guy, too.
Yes, I do.
So tell me a little bit about your books. You've written several books. You were interviewed by Dr. Shula. And what was that like?
Oh, being interviewed by Dr. Shula was one of the best experiences of my life. And I was interviewed twice in between two church services. He and I then had a discussion together. So we were in his office chatting, and we spoke so much about life. And you must know about Viktor Frankl, right? Viktor Frankl's book was one of the things that got me through. And here's Dr. Shula and I speaking, and he says to me, my friend Viktor Frankl and I, these are our beliefs. And it was just so amazing sitting there talking with him, and he's sharing about his buddy Viktor Frankl, and talking actually about, he shared with me how they both felt that this self-esteem and how you feel about yourself is the core of everything. And I've never forgotten that. And I take that with me everywhere. So if ever I'm personally disturbed, I go, okay, Tanya, so what is it about me that's having the problem here? What is it about me that's having difficulty with that person? So it was a good lesson. So my books, my first two books, they were written not long after Phil passed away. And he wanted to write a book about his journey and kept quite a detailed journal about it. So after he passed away, I picked it up and I wrote the book, his journey, and then my journey for the 12 months after he passed away. In order to help people cope with the grieving process, actually that was the main reason, to be real and raw and go, yes, at times it feels black, but then sometimes there are periods of joy amongst it. And I used to call it my tsunami. I could feel that wave of grief coming over me, and it would bowl me over. But then I'd come up again, and I'd bob, and I'd see the sunshine again. So it was very much a book written for people to know that hope is there. And alongside that book, because I was already practicing as a therapist at that time, I had so many strategies on how to live your best life and how to cope with transition and transformation and the grieving process. So I then wrote a workbook companion which accompanied that book. So it's just a list of strategies.
Right.
Yeah, and so they were published about 8 years ago, and that's what got me on the show with Dr. Schuler. Since then, I've been writing and writing and writing, and this year, finally, I'm going to finish off the third and hopefully fourth book. I've written so much. There's 2 books there, and one of them is about resilience, and particularly for the CEO, the executive, and how to get back after adversity, how to come back even stronger after adversity, how to rediscover who you are. Sometimes you don't need to have gone through adversity. It could simply be a change in a life stage where you need to then go, okay, I've got to drop a gear and really go hard out because I've got another decade here where I'm just going to go for it. So that's what that book's about.
Nice. I was thinking too, and this is sometimes, things I share with my clients. It's hard being human. It's hard being yourself. And it's okay to have a hard time. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person, doesn't mean that you're incompetent, doesn't mean that you're inadequate. You can give yourself permission to be human. And I think sometimes that's, the quagmire with self-esteem is that you're not giving yourself permission just to have faults. You're just beating yourself up. And one of my own personal epiphanies happened about 2 years ago with all the other work that I've done over the years, including integrated energy healing out there in New Mexico. That was a 4-year program. And reading a book by Eva Pirakis and Fear No Evil and the Path work and a variety of different, incredible literary works. But what really got me was that, we all desire divine happiness. And to be happy, we just simply have to resolve whatever it is that makes us unhappy. And so that allowed me to have that epiphany and say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to celebrate my faults and my weaknesses. Not to disregard them, not to be in denial of them, but really to celebrate the fact that now I have an awareness of something that I can work on. Not making them wrong, but knowing that there is some sense to this. And I learned something, in some of the other work in a Genius Mastermind group with Mitchell Stefko, and where we were talking about, all of our behaviors. Let's just be curious about them. All of our behaviors, all of our patterns, all of our programs, somehow they make sense. And so
that was a big.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that was a big part of my healing, my personal healing as a youngster was, Tanya, accept who you are and you're lovable anyway.
But accept and honor and surrender, because one of the things that I did in my brain, in my head, in my logical brain, and as I like to share with people, I can logic myself into anything and logic myself out of anything. And I would say, you have to accept this, right? And that didn't feel right. But when I was able to get in alignment with my heart and just say, hey, you know what? I really surrender, accept, this, and not making it an issue anymore, it made a huge difference for me.
Yes.
So for all those, listening, and I'm sure you're writing about resilience, is probably in the same field, that it's okay to have a hard time. And it's not okay to have a hard time because you're going to learn something. No, it's just okay that you're having a hard time. It makes sense. And fortunately, hopefully, you will learn something out of it.
Yeah. And I find the key for me personally is to welcome the hard time when it's there, to not run from it, and to be present while it's there and acknowledge it. Acknowledge the pain, the tears, whatever it is. I find journaling really helps actually during the hard times, but to welcome it, knowing that Once that tsunami is over, then I'll be bobbing up and my face will be clear and I'll be looking into that glistening sun again, you know?
And you're absolutely
Yeah.
spot on with that, because simply if you go into denial, whatever
Mm,
emotions, whatever is going on internally, any of those
mm,
conflicts, won't
mm,
be resolved, and they'll just show up
mm,
one way or another, later on. And it's just something
mm,
you just have to deal with, like it or not. It's like I like to always put it. What's your role in all this? I mean, how did you actually get here to be in this
mm,
way? I mean, it's
mm,
your responsibility there. Not right, not
mm,
wrong, but you also can get yourself out of it. So I'm
mm.
anticipating and with excitement your book when it comes out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And another thing, as you were speaking there, just sharing that if I don't deal with the emotional stuff, it will manifest physically. And it may only be a pounding headache, but that's my body going, there's stuff in there that you haven't released and let go of. And that's part of the book as well, the physical resilience, the physical body, and not underestimating self care and the importance of taking care of our physical bodies in order to be free emotionally and spiritually.
Wow. So I'm excited for
Yeah.
you. I'm excited for you more so because of the many people that you get to help,
Yeah.
and and all the future books that come out. And one thing that I will share with you and anybody
Mm,
listening is an integral part of any of the complexity that's going in our brains about what's
mm,
happening in life or decisions. And I actually learned this from Tony Robbins too. You have to write it down, because your
yes.
brain can't process all that information all at once. The
Mm,
truth is that your brain can only really process, is it 200 bits of information every second consciously. We can only
mm,
think of seven random things that are of the same kind of type in our brain. So we have that limited capacity to manage this stuff. And I
mm,
actually also wrote a book, 52-week success plan, and it's 52 habits. And people can
mm,
ascribe to a different habit every single week. At the end of the year,
mm,
try all the 52 habits and change your life. One of which is journaling. And science actually shows that people who journal are a lot healthier and their blood
uh,
pressure is better. And it's just
mm,
simply that they're able to process things much more effectively.
mm,
And so by
mm,
you
mm.
doing all the journaling that you've done, and I've done tons of journaling in the past, I don't do it anymore. I should do more of it. But then again, I don't have any problems, I guess. Well, that's not true either. But I should do a lot
Write
more.
about the good stuff.
Yeah,
Write about the good stuff.
it's relevant.
And look, one of the things I love to share with people is, okay, yes, I studied as an accountant, very structured business person,
Mhm.
and with English being my second language, being brought up Yugoslav, Croatian, I had this belief that I was really dumb at English and writing. And so that was a belief. Now, see how wrong that belief was? Because if you were to ask me, what is the thing that you are most passionate about, Tanya? What makes your heart sing? It is to write. It is to write and to express and to share with others, either whether it's blogging or the books. So that is an example that also it's never too late to really follow your passion. And in my 50s now, I'm saying this is going to be my best decade ever. I mean, I'm committing to that. So don't let your limiting beliefs, which are usually probably wrong, hold you back with anything.
I love that. I love that. And so, with those wonderful words of wisdom, I really want to thank you for tonight, Tanya. It's been absolutely
You're welcome.
delightful and insightful. And it reminds me, about resilience. Resilience is something that we can tap into. And so I
Mm,
hope to have you back on this platform for sure. I'm
yeah.
excited about all the people that you get to help and support. And again,
Mm,
it's really about handing out that information. And thank you for
mm.
talking about resilience today.
Thank you. And I do hope we connect when you come to New Zealand.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's going to be in April and May with a wonderful group of transformational leaders doing some
Great.
humanitarian work, bringing some water filter systems to some of the indigenous tribes, but also
Beautiful.
being messengers of different talents, gifts, practices, if you will. And again, it's about bringing new references to people that can actually make a difference in their life. So I want to thank you again. And I am Dr. Bart Rademacher, Prescriptions for Your Transformation. Real people, real conversations, real success. Tanya, thank you so much.